Hi, and welcome to Wait, Hold Up, What? Today we talk to Kate Harris, a business coach, strategist, managing partner at Astoria Collective, co-director at Story Gatherings, challenger of the status quo, speaker, writer, Enneagram 8, and a mom of 3. She spends her days coaching creative entrepreneurs and consulting global brands, nonprofits, and government agencies. She is also a co-curator of multiple live experiences, ranging from intimate retreats to large conferences attended by executives and creative leaders from organizations like Apple, Google, Disney, Nike, Amazon, and more, including yours truly. Advocating for ourselves and others starts with a crucial step. It's understanding our limitations and embracing them as part of our growth. So today we talk about that. We uncover the significance of knowing what you truly desire, the power of continuous learning, and the importance of holding space not only for ourselves, but for those around us. We want to discover how letting your passions shine through can inspire us, those around us, and the next generation, which helps to foster a culture of authenticity and empowerment. We confront pervasive mindsets, and one especially, this idea that success is solely defined by accolades and prizes. We want to challenge the notion that if you can't be the best, you shouldn't even try, and instead how we should advocate for a shift towards confidence over competition, emphasizing the value of supporting each other's journeys regardless of our achievements. Moreover, we explore the vital role of taking up space and making noise in today's society. Why does it matter, and how does it contribute to the collective advancement of all individuals? I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation and be inspired by Kate the way that I have. Thank you for joining us, and please help me welcome Kate Harris. Did you know that 80% of the world's purchases are influenced and made by women? Or that 90% of product development, manufacturing, and corporate leadership is led by men? I don't know about you, but that seems like some funky, disconnected math. This disconnect means large segments of the population are not getting their needs met because the products being made never even asked us what problems we needed to solve. Instead, companies use a pink it and shrink it philosophy. Not familiar? I bet you are. You know it. Take a man's product, make it smaller, paint it pink, sell it for 25% more. Then, when the products fail to make a dent in the market or to sell rapidly, they say things like, the market wasn't ready. Or, we were so sure it was going to work, I wonder what happened. And then they move on. I'm here to tell you, the market is most definitely ready. But the market is savvy, and putting some paint and saying it was designed for us is a slap in the face. We have real needs, and we're not settling for anything less than real solutions. If this sounds familiar to you and your business, then it's time to connect with Eliminate Girl Hate. We help businesses understand the lucrative consumer segment of women and how to meet their needs in authentic ways. From problem solving, product creation, marketing, and even human resource practices, we help create safe and equitable spaces for the female segment. And these safe spaces increase profit margins, employee retention, and brand loyalty along the way. It's time to start a revolution and meet your consumers where they are. It's time to eliminate girl hate. Check us out, eliminategirlhate.com, and find out how we can help your business today. Have you ever dreamed of writing a book? I know I have. Or maybe, also like me, you've started a manuscript. Maybe you've started 10 and you've just never finished it, or never let anybody else read it, or never thought you could publish it. Wherever you are in the process, Jim Woods would like to help. Jim's a writer just like you, but he's also a coach who loves helping writers bring their books into the world and make them a reality. If you are like me, sometimes you need that push, a supportive but demanding cohort along the way to put your stories out into the world and keep you on track. Jim Woods is that cohort. Visit jimwoodswrites.com and click the Let's Chat button. Mention our podcast for a free clarity call and get your story out into the world because we need it. We are sponsored by Epiphany Recording Studio. Creativity needs to flow freely if you want to reach that aha moment that we're all looking for. At Epiphany Recording Studio, their goal is to create space that takes full advantage of those moments. From podcast and video production to music creation, you get the support you need to create compelling stories with a competitive sound. Your ideas can flow freely because they partner with you free of judgment, ready to be vulnerable, do the work, and make your projects look and sound their best. So let Epiphany Recording Studio help you reach your artistic vision by visiting them today at epiphanyrecordingstudio.com. Tell them Dawn sent you. Welcome, Kate. I'm so excited to have you here. When I start every episode, I kind of just ask the guests to tell us a little bit about what they do. I know.
I love this. I love this question because it is actually the most random question. Like, I'm going to give you the most random answer
I love
because
it.
I have a lot of things that I do. So I am a co-owner of a business called Astoria Collective, and my business partner is my husband, which is super unique and fun. We also curate a conference called Story Conference, which we are very excited to be bringing back in 2025. It's going to be great. I also am a copywriter and a brand strategist and a mom of 3. And, that includes shuttling. I'm like a Uber driver sometimes. So personal chef to 3 people. But yeah, I do a little bit of everything.
And it's funny because in the intro, I listed kind of what you did, and it was kind of the longest explanation or whatever detailed. But I did not put copywriter in there, and I feel remiss about it because even though I had somewhat known who you were and in my dealings with Story and so forth, like I kind of knew you, but I hadn't really met you. And when I was invited to speak and the materials came and it was describing what the event was going to be and this concept about do you know who you are? It is kind of based off Hook and Peter Pan and this concept of don't you know who you are? And I read the copy and I was crying and immediately yes. And I immediately reached out to Harris and was like, you've got to tell me who wrote this because this is so fantastic. And he told me it was you. And I think I sent you a message because I was just so moved by what you wrote and how it hit the mark on what I was feeling after COVID and what I was feeling with what I was doing. And so I feel so silly that I didn't put that in the intro. Because look, you are a lot of things and they're all equally amazing, but that was kind of how I came to you and met you and fantastic, really fantastic.
It's funny because people actually, the copywriter part is the part that isn't face forward a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it for so long. I've been doing it for 15 years. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I wrote for so long behind the scenes. And I'm not looking to put my name on my work. I'm just looking to make stuff feel really amazing and have great cadence and language around what we're trying to create. And that specific story where we talked about Don't You Know Who You Are was really the launch pad for where I find myself now, because we got so much great feedback on just conceptually what it was, but just how we described it and how we put language around it.
Yeah, so. I still I have my little book and I still read it sometimes and look at it. Have you ever considered writing a book?
Funny you should ask. I actually am. Ooh. I will be writing a book. It is in those first draft phases right now where I am doing a lot of research and I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I can say that it is going to be around speaking up. Like the little tagline that I have that I'm working with for myself right now is it's a book about speaking up. But I am writing it from the perspective of being a Scandinavian. So digging back into my Viking roots and knowing that in Viking culture, women were actually considered equal.
Yes.
And they were one of the few medieval cultures that put their women on the same playing field as their men. And some of them were warriors, kind of tapping back into some of that and going, okay, if we look at who we are and where we've come from, what is the thing that we need going forward? How can we stand up? How can we stand in the gap? How can we create bridges? So I am working on that. Who knows what my husband's like, hey, maybe for Story 2025, we release this, but we'll see.
Well, because it's no small feat to take on a book. I know you know that because Harris has written a book and and it's a
Yes.
lot, and I'm also working on
I love that.
that and trying to figure out what that looks like, and, uh, and there's some sort of internal bravery that it takes to put those words into the universe, especially when it's a
Oh, man.
topic that means so much to you, right? And you've experienced.
Yeah, and I think that's for me coming from not just my heritage, and that's something I've really reconnected with in the last 5 or 6 years is, oh wow, I didn't realize all of these things about where I've come from and my grandparents being first generation Americans. I actually never knew that,
Oh,
and I
wow.
didn't know that both my grandparents, both sides of my dad's grandparents or parents spoke Norwegian,
Huh.
and my mom's parents spoke Swedish because they were first generation, and I never knew. And there's something about how we hide ourselves and we try to assimilate into
Yeah.
culture. And so we eliminate and we delete pieces of who we are in order to belong. And really, belonging is this funny relative word because we decide what belonging looks like for us, others decide what belonging looks like for them. And now you have this grandchild coming in and going, "Man, we lost a lot. Like,
Yeah.
what can I get back?" And I think as I think about the book and as I think about what it is that I'm trying to create and the stuff that I'm trying to bring into this world, it's getting back to who we are. It's finding and tapping into what has been deleted that I can reclaim.
Mm.
That feels really important to me as I raise kids of my own is what can I offer them that I'm not deleting
Yeah.
on their behalf?
And I think there's also something about, you collectively, there's all this research that shows we're the loneliest we've ever been in recorded
Yes.
history. And I think a lot of that comes from this idea of assimilation and this idea of letting go, or maybe even not being connected to the things that made us and that are maybe inherent and kind of part of us that we know it's there, but we don't know why or where it came from. And so you're seeing so much or so many people start to come back and re identify with where they came from. And there's more pride in that now, as
Absolutely.
right?
And I think as Americans,
Yes.
Americans specifically, we have deleted parts of our ancestry, parts of our heritage for the sake of being
And
American, where
patriotic.
other countries have never done that.
Yes. Yeah.
It is, oh, if I'm French, I am French.
French. Yes.
If I am Australian, I am
Yeah.
Australian. Or, if I'm Japanese, I'm Japanese. And it is there's a pride that comes with that. And I think the American version of pride is very different. It's very warped
Yeah.
because we are this melting pot. So we have a collective identity,
Yes.
but we don't have individual identity.
Yes. Yes. And a
So
lot
it's
of
it's reclaiming that individual stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I think, too, is because of the ideal of what we wanted America to be. And as and not I'm not going to get political in this conversation, I promise. But
Great.
as we have opened up to realizing that maybe we've missed the mark in some of those areas, I think
Mhm.
then people feel this permission to explore where they came from and who they are and allow some of that back into their life. And I would especially say that is for Anglo-Saxon Americans, right? Who very much left that behind
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So it's an interesting topic for sure.
Yeah. And it's an interesting topic based on even just the conversation we started out with,
Yeah.
which is don't you know who you are?
Yeah.
When you start asking those, it's a simple question,
Mm.
but it's as we create story every year, it's funny how often that line shows up in film.
Yes.
Who are you? Don't you know who you are? The Lion King asks it. The Beauty and the Beast asks it. And the Little Mermaid asks it. Who are
So,
you? Alice in Wonderland. So there's all. I think as a culture, we are always trying to figure out who are we in, not just in this moment, but where have I been and where am I going?
yep.
And so to kind of bring it full circle, when we think about our businesses and we think about what we're trying to create in the world, who are we and who is next?
Yeah. Yeah. Because also in that, most of these stories are built around some form of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
think about the hero's journey, there is a component of it that is about finding yourself. You find yourself in the journey, and that's part of what creates the hero, is that they are able to tap into who they authentically are and the strengths that they have to help other people. And it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Absolutely.
simple concept that we overcomplicate very often.
Yeah. And I think as women, we overcomplicate it 25 steps further.
Yeah.
We already don't feel like we belong. We already don't feel like we are set up to win in X, Y, and Z. We are already operating from a deficit, which means the gap between where we are and where we want to be or where we belong is much wider.
Or at least feels
And
that way.
yeah, or at
Yeah.
least feels that way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so figuring out who we are as women or who we are as humans is complicated. And it's a necessary evil, if you will, to really dig in and do the work, because that's how change happens.
Yeah.
And that's how we can change things for ourselves and for the people that are going to come after us.
Yeah. And there's such a weird narrative around, I think, women especially, about a selfishness to that journey and a selfishness to wanting to know who we are and spending time on that. Because how dare we when we have all these other people we're supposed to be taking care of?
Yeah. It's funny when you said hero's journey, I immediately in my head thought, but I'm not supposed to be the hero.
I was going to say that, which is even funnier. Yes, it's total. Like there's
I'm not
something
supposed to
in
be
us.
the hero.
Do you remember the movie? Oh my gosh, it's The Holiday. Kate Winslet,
Oh, yes.
Cameron Diaz, right? And
Oh, it's hilarious.
there's that scene where she's with the older gentleman whose name I can't remember, which is driving me nuts. And she's like, "Oh, you're right. I'm supposed to be the leading lady in my own life." But as women, we often step into the supporting character role, and because
Yes.
it's more comfortable. I cannot tell you how many times I have said to people that I don't like the camera on me, but I would love to be the funny sidekick. Like, I'm comfortable in that role. And a lot of my therapy is about how do I step out as the main character and as the person who gets to be the hero in my own story, whether that be the hero for myself, which is, I think, the most important, but also the hero for other people. And so it's super fascinating to think about that in terms of that.
Yeah, it's countercultural.
Yes.
It's since the beginning of time, women have been one step below.
Yeah.
And it's ingrained in our DNA. It's the way things have always been. And it's only in the last 100 years that we have actually asked the question, but why?
Yes. Yes.
But why, and why not me?
Yes.
And so to change the tide, to really change the narrative, takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it may not even happen in our lifetime. But the strides that have been made to allow space for that question, or to allow space to rise up
Yeah.
and to go, oh, you know what? I have decided, even that phrase alone, I have decided that this is what is next for me,
Yes.
is huge. And I am super passionate about helping other women, other entrepreneurs, male and female, but specifically women. I coach a lot of women. Find that place where they can really find the voice that makes them question what's possible. That makes them question, oh, well, if I say it that way, am I gonna rub people the wrong way? And a lot of times my question is, but if a man said it,
Yeah.
would they be heard that way? So it's
Yeah.
both in the way you say it,
Yeah.
and how you say it with confidence.
And also,
So say it anyway.
is it okay to rub people the wrong way every once in a while? You
I would
know?
say it is.
Yeah, like, and not to use a very overused quote, but that whole idea that, like, meek women or quiet women never make history. I don't remember what the actual quote is, but
Yeah.
that idea that it's like, I think people think the hero's journey or success looks easy when they're watching someone else do it. but they don't realize how difficult that journey is, and that it takes courage and it takes a fortitude. I was a guest on another podcast this week, and the man that was the host asked me, about women being in spaces that are not traditionally female oriented and why more women don't do it. And part of my answer was explaining that I don't think people realize how hard it is to be the first.
How hard it is to be the first, or were you even listening?
Yes.
Because how many women have actually spoken up before and you just weren't listening?
Yes. And that you're in spaces that, sometimes the people that are there with you are purposely making it harder for you. And so you have to be able to say, gosh, I really gotta, if I'm going to do this, like my skin might need to be thicker, or you know what I mean? Like I'm going to come home and cry a lot, but then I'm going to go back in tomorrow and I'm going to do it again. And that's hard. And there's days you don't want to do that. And there's days where you say, why do I have to be the one that struggles this much here? Like, why can't someone else do it? And then the next day you say, oh, because I am the one that has to do this. I get to do it. And there's those conflicting emotions around that. And sometimes you just want to break and you're like, I want things to be a little bit easier. And so you step away from those spaces that maybe aren't serving you right now because the fight is really hard.
Man, it's so funny how timely this conversation is, because we just made the decision last week to pull our three kids out of their very bougie private school.
Ooh.
It was because of a lot of things, but our middle daughter was being trolled by parents.
Ugh.
And it's a real thing. And we decided, you know what? There is no need to continue to put all three of them in a space that is really unhealthy. Like, yes to adversity and learning how to work through adversity, but also this is just not at 8 years old.
Yeah.
And so we chose to leave, and the amount of conversations that I've been having, I came into this after having coffee with a girlfriend this morning, where she was like, man, I can't believe that y'all left. She's like, but now I want to go too.
Yeah.
And the amount of text messages and DMs that I'm getting going, man, I feel the same way you feel. I just didn't know that anyone else felt like I felt. And so I think I want to leave. And I think I want to choose something better for myself or my family. And I wrote about it on LinkedIn, and I've actually been writing about it for a while on LinkedIn, asking these questions of, we get to choose our hard. So if we are choosing our hard, it's hard for me to stay and it's hard for me to leave. But where is the value, and where can I find the joy longer term? And where can I really lean in? So yeah, it looked like taking our kids out of a school that is literally the most competitive school to get into right now, knowing we can't get back in.
Yeah.
And going, this was the right choice, and it was freakishly difficult. And I had a lot of emotions around it.
Of course.
But it's the right call.
Yeah.
And our family motto this year is not without danger.
Ooh.
And that, I know, and it's fun. If anyone has seen The Gentleman, it comes straight from Guy Ritchie, but not without danger. And so what that looks like is Harris's do hard things.
Yeah.
And we want to instill in our kids Harris's do hard things because it matters. So it means standing in the gap and going, this is not okay. And I'm not going to subject myself to this sort of pain and torture for the sake of learning something longer than I need to.
Yeah.
And at some point we have to go, no, this is just, no, we're going to move on. And if that inspires other people, I think in my LinkedIn post, I literally said at the end of the post, we hope to inspire other families to make the changes that they need to make for themselves because it's important for the future. We're showing our kids you can do hard things now so that in the future, those hard things are maybe just a little less difficult, or they're a little bit more prepared for them. And that's important. It's a resilience that they're building.
And what is interesting about this is I don't want people to misconstrue there's a wrong or a right way to do something. So
Nope.
there are some people who staying and fighting is the right thing and
And I
being
have
the
fought.
first. Yeah. And being the first and
Yeah.
going through that pain that might be involved in that. And there are some people that the hard choice is leaving and going through the pain of leaving. It's all
Yeah.
hard, right?
Yeah. You're
Like,
choosing your hard.
exactly. And I like that. Choosing your, I was like, I hope the camera doesn't see me typing this. Like, I want to remember this section because
Yeah.
I love that concept of choosing your hard, because there is this belief that there's an easy way and a hard way. And some social media philosophers, if you will, act as
Yes.
if there's one hard way and there's one easy way, and you're chickening out if you choose one or the other. And then there's other social media philosophers that say the opposite. And it can be so difficult. This is some of the challenges of social media and the internet, right? It can be
Yeah.
so difficult because people are looking for the answer, the truth, and there isn't one. Everything has shades of gray, and it's about knowing yourself enough, trusting yourself enough, being vulnerable enough with yourself to choose what's right with you, regardless of what other people think about it, because it's right for
Absolutely.
you. And sometimes what feels right today, in a year, you'll say, I'm not sure that was the right choice for me, but here's what I
Absolutely.
learned from it, which makes it the right choice.
Yeah. My husband keeps reminding me that nothing is permanent but death.
Yep.
So if nothing is permanent but death, let's try something. So
Yeah.
we are actually giving it a year to see what it looks like. And to be completely frank, we actually love the school. The school is amazing. It has been an oasis for us, and especially over COVID,
Yeah.
all of these 5 years that we've been there. But there are things after fighting for a year, we've just gone, you know what? We need to hit the reset button. And this is what that looks like for us. And the mental, emotional health of our family is more important in this next year
Yeah.
than continuing to fight. And I will fight from the sidelines because that's just who I am. But like, yes, what would that look like if we supported people who chose hard? What would it look like? My son's fourth grade teacher, we had conferences the day after we pulled them out, basically. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I just want to let you know that this was the most brilliant choice you could have made for your kid.
Oh,
How can I support you?"
wow.
And I was like, this is what I'm going to miss. But also, thank you for seeing us as an individual in this sea of people,
Yeah.
and recognizing that there was something missing. Dude is super creative. They were supposed to create robots, and he created a toaster robot. He was the only one who did. And she was like, what would happen if he had the space to dream? What would happen if he had the boxes and the constraints and the shackles taken off, where he could really think and dream to the full capacity that he's capable of? How much better would the world be?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you for seeing him.
And that's
And thank you
everything
for supporting us.
everything you all talk about, right? It's wonder.
Yes.
She's basically
Yes.
describing wonder there,
Yes.
right? And so, like, what a connection to, like, I would have been like, what's his name? Tom Cruise, right? Who's coming
Yes.
with me?
Yes.
Right? Like, you want to come with me, fourth grade teacher?
You
Let's
wanna go
go.
with me? Let's do this.
And knowing
Oh
you
my
and Harris,
gosh.
I'm surprised you weren't like, let's go and let's start our own school. Like,
I mean,
of
that may have
course.
come about, but
Of
I'm like,
course.
you know what? We have a lot of irons in the fire. Let's just pump the brakes.
I love that.
But again, just what does it look like to support people when they make hard choices,
Yeah.
instead of criticizing every move that they make? How much better could the world be?
Support, yes, but asking the question, why was that the right choice for you? Instead of
Yeah.
immediately attacking, we don't know why people make the choices that they make. So instead of just immediately going to the negative, opening up
Yeah.
the dialogue, hearing their story to understand, then you might say, that is not the choice I would have made. That is not the right choice for me, but I can
Mhm.
see why it was the right choice for you. and honoring
Yeah.
that for each other. It's part
Yeah.
of, I'm assuming you've seen this, but there's this viral video from years ago about the first follower. And it's such a wonderful
Oh,
video.
no.
It's such a wonderful video. I will send it to you after
Okay.
this.
Okay.
But the concept of it is it's a video where you see like a grassy lawn and people are kind of sitting in different areas. And randomly, some dude gets up and he just starts dancing. And like,
Oh, I have seen this.
everybody starts looking, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, this dude, right? And people mock. And they're like, oh my gosh, or videotaping it, because that's really big in our society. If something's different, we videotape it. And then all of a sudden, somebody joins that person. And when that first follower joins, all of a sudden it's like, wait, is that weird? Is that silly? Should we be making fun of it? Maybe we should get up. And then a third and a fourth. And suddenly within 90 seconds, there's just a dance party on this lawn. And this value of that first person is so brave, but they are not the one. It's that first follower that really gets things rolling, and that importance of that. And we always attribute things to the first, but it's really that shares space with them, gives them grace, supports them, that allows them to be seen in a different light. And I think that's so beautiful. That concept is really cool.
It always takes one.
It
just
does.
takes one.
It does. And even internally with our own psyche, it's the person that comes and holds your hand. It's the person that puts their hand on your shoulder, the person that helps you write your copy so that your voice can come to life.
Yes.
That is what lets your genius come out, because and I talk about this a lot, or we talk about this a lot on this show, is this idea of external validation versus internal. And yes, external validation, we shouldn't need it. We shouldn't want it. But there is something about someone giving you grace that creates a strength in you to believe in the choices that you make and the gut that you're following, right? I have somebody who works with me, and he was trying to make a decision, and I said, well, or I was trying to make a decision, let's be honest. And I said, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to wait. I'm making this decision right now. The answer is yes. And he goes, you got to teach me how you do that. And I was like, I'm going to teach you your first lesson right here. I do not follow my head, and I do not follow my heart. I follow my gut, because the heart and the emotions can sometimes lead me down the wrong path. And the head is too logical because it wants to do what the world tells me to do. But my gut knows. My gut knows to take a chance and to be brave and to do dangerous things, right?
Yes.
And
exactly.
And look, I'm not a philosopher, but in that moment, he was like, oh. You know, like it was like, okay, I get that a little bit. That doesn't mean my head is always wrong and my heart is always wrong. It just means the gut is more reliable for me. And I know that now, right? And each person has to figure out what of my senses is the most reliable thing for me to trust and to move forward with.
Yeah, it's some of what I love about being a coach is having those kind of conversations where someone's going, I don't, you can see them vacillating between, man, this is really what I want to say, but I'm not really sure. And a lot of times I'll find myself going, quick, gut instinct.
Yep.
What is it? If you could say anything quick, tell me as fast as you can. I don't want you to think too much about it. I don't want you to ruminate on it. Just what comes up immediately. Or, hey, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And what are the first things that come to your mind that you start thinking about or feeling in the moment? Because it is so telling. Because what we don't realize is I'm a gut person too, which comes across to a lot of people as impulsivity. I am not necessarily impulsive. I've probably been thinking about it for a really long time, whether I have vocalized it or not. So to our school, they're going, well, what happened overnight? And I'm going, oh, no. We've been talking about this for a year. A year. And we've been having conversations with y'all for a year. So you haven't been listening. But it's that this looks like an impulsive decision or impulsive reaction, but it's really our gut holds on to that. No, I know what I I know what I need. I know what I want. I know what I need to say. And as a coach, helping other people find that
Yeah.
is so amazing because I get to watch it happen in real time
Mm-hmm.
and to watch the light bulbs go off and someone go, oh my gosh, I've never had somebody push me or ask those questions in that way. I had an artist. We have an artist as part of our cohort in the poetics, and he's been struggling to write a manifesto because we have everyone write a manifesto when they come in. And it's part of just this grounding experience.
Yeah.
It's really powerful for people. And as an artist, he was like, well, I don't want people to feel bad or I don't want this. And I was like, okay, gut reaction for yourself. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And by the end, he was practically in tears because he's like, I've never allowed myself the space to just feel what I need to feel and to let those things rise because they have felt wrong. They have felt off kilter. They have felt countercultural.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was okay to feel those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, but what if it's okay? And what would happen between now and the future for other people if you allowed yourself to think those things?
Yeah.
You allowed yourself to say those things. How much better would the world be?
Yeah. And the
And he's
opposite,
like,
what if you don't? What does that do to you if you ignore it?
don't hold back your genius.
Yeah.
Yes, don't hold back your genius.
Yeah.
So many people get stuck, and I think we're all guilty of it. We want the validation. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to get called out in the meeting or in the thing
Yeah.
because we don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
But also, as an Enneagram 8, I go, I don't really care. So I think as a business coach who is an Enneagram 8, I approach a lot of that stuff with, so what?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
There is genius on the other side of this.
It's interesting because we live in a culture where more and more people are identifying or discovering, this is a personal discovery of mine, that we've leaned so far into perfectionism that we lose our authenticity in the process of it. And so when we talk about gut versus head, it's the head is trying to be perfect. But perfect to who and perfect based on what? When the gut is like, but that doesn't feel right and it doesn't sit well. And then we get sick and we get all of these depression and anxiety and ADHD and autoimmune disease and gut health and all of these things. And we wonder where it's coming from. And it's because we're seeking perfectionism that doesn't exist. And sometimes we're so unconscious of it that we don't even know that that's what's happening. And a world opens up to us when we allow space for ourselves to just feel a certain way.
Yeah. And sometimes what's funny is it takes another person to see that thing on our behalf. Yeah. So I know before we ever did this call, or before we ever did this podcast, we did a call. Yeah. We were talking about what got me here. Like, what was that moment to step out? And I mentioned that my husband is my business partner, which is so much fun. And I absolutely love it. But he has been that voice. That, hey, I see this and I think this would be a good place for you. Are you ready for it? And I've always said no for whatever reason, the perfectionism, the sticking in my head and going, yeah, but what if someone doesn't like it? Or what if they think that my idea was bad? And then we did story, Don't You Know Who You Are? And I remember vividly sitting, I was supposed to be a fly on the wall, sitting in this room with all of these amazing creative directors. And they were dreaming up what the next story would look like. And they were throwing around these ideas. And I just kept going, gosh, that sounds like Hook. I had just watched it with my kids again. It's a fantastic movie. And I remember going, oh man, that's like that moment when Peter is standing there and the kid pushes on his face and goes, oh, there you are, Peter. And everyone just stopped and I was like, oh crap. I have said the wrong. I have not understood. And that was my brain. Oh, you have not understood the question. You have not understood the conversation. And I remember Tony looking at me and going, oh my gosh, you're so right.
And that's it.
Oh. And then it snowballed from there. And I was like, oh, maybe I do belong here. My husband's been saying that I belong here this whole time. And I have been like, no, I'm good. And then now here I am. I'm coaching other people and I'm writing a book and I'm doing these things that I would never have done had I not had someone see something that I probably knew was there,
Yep.
but didn't believe that it could be possible.
And it's something interesting because, like, the human condition, we all want to be seen and heard, but by heard, I mean understood. And
Correct.
yet, being seen is the most vulnerable and frightening experience that there
It
can
really
be.
is.
And it's like,
I want it desperately, but also don't.
yes, and, I wanna for the people that are listening, you mentioned the poetics, and so I wanna go a
Yes.
little bit in that direction. So, Harris and Kate, during COVID, a lot of their business was around events, and it was around being in the public eye or speaking at events and doing different things at events. And so at COVID, there was kind of this shift that had to happen. And I remember because Harris and I talked on the phone before you guys even did it, and he was
Yeah.
like, here's what we're thinking about doing. It's sort of like a coaching group, but it's not really a coaching group. We're going to call it the circle. And he's like,
Yeah.
would you be willing to be one of the first members? And it was twofold. It was the circle and the inner circle. And so I did both of those, and they were these very interesting. The circle was larger. It was 50 to 60 people,
Yep.
I believe. And we would jump on calls 2 or 3 times a week. And it was really learning not just from Harris, you and the team, but it was all the collective people that you had in your universe from different industries and businesses and really arts of storytelling. And then it was the people in the group who also
Yeah.
had all of these skills and talents and stories telling ventures of their own. And then the inner circle at the time, I was part of the first one. And so there was only 4 of us.
I was going to say there were 4 of you.
Yes, and the 4 of us, it was really about digging into what our next chapter was and working together to develop that. That's the simplest way I can put it. And I did the first 2 inner circles. Like, I was in both
Yep.
of those groups. And what a beautiful thing for COVID, first of all, to be
Yeah.
involved in that. For me, especially, I am a high risk person. And so I was isolated a lot longer than most people. And I wasn't working at the time. And so it was a community that I really needed. And I also was going through a pretty, I guess, it's going to make me a pretty traumatic time in my life. And so there was a healing that was happening without me knowing it. Sorry for the audio files. I'm not apologizing for crying, but I know some people hate weird sounds on the microphone. But it wasn't just what the coach was providing. That was great. It was wonderful, right? All of the experts, quote unquote, that came in were great. But it was also the space that was allowed in this community of people. And for good, bad, or worse, I just can't shut up. So, like, my heart is on my sleeve. I have to say things. And so I think I had a lot of people come up to me at Story 2022 that I'd never met, but had heard all of the recordings of me
Yep.
bawling my eyes out, expressing where I was struggling. And so for me, it felt like this whole, like, I was maybe the first, but then there was the first follower that then allowed space for other people.
Yeah.
And you have turned that into what is now the poetics, which has a
Mhm.
little bit more focus because of what you all learned around a small business and entrepreneurship, but it still is providing that space and vulnerability for people to have the moment like you discussed with the artist where so many people look at business as this, and this, and you build a plan and you follow it. But when it is a small business, when it is your purpose, when it is your passion, when it is something you care so deeply about, it is about more than revenue and, numbers. And somebody said in those meetings, you are not Tupperware. Stop acting like it. And it was such a moment for me. And I had to take a step back from it for lots of reasons we don't need to go into. But it was as if that started my healing journey. And then I had to walk away to do my own work to then
Mhm.
continue on what you all were telling me I was here to do. And
Yeah.
I owe you guys so much for that because, ooh, I'm so sorry I did not know this would happen, but I needed that. That was the first step I needed without knowing that I needed it. And
Yeah.
I went into it saying, I think I want to write a book. And Harris said, maybe, but you have something right here that needs to happen first. And that's the name of my company came from those meetings. You all helped me write what my mission and my vision was and all of those things. And it gave me permission. And so I feel like I just wrote a commercial for the Poetics, but um, it's really wonderful to find community. And one of the things we talked about early on was this idea of having a supportive and demanding community. And you
Mhm.
and I then talked before this, we talked about confidence over competition. And so I
Yes.
would love to hear your thoughts on how those two things work together. This idea of supportive and demanding, and then
Yeah.
confidence over community or over competition.
Competition. Yeah. It's fascinating because as the Poetics has morphed, the reason we call it the Poetics is Aristotle had a series of works called the Poetics. And poetry is loosely defined as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And so,
Wait,
as
wait. Will you please repeat that? Because I love that.
yes, poetry is defined very loosely as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings.
Ooh, wow.
So the poetics,
Sorry.
the
That just
poetics, it's okay, it's okay. So as we have worked, so we my husband and I came up with the idea of the Poetics and calling it Poetics. And Aristotle was the first of the three philosophers to embrace the arts. The other two, Socrates and Plato, came before him. And Socrates and Plato both felt like the artists, the creatives, were so not useful that they should just be put to death. I mean, that was
yeah.
literally what they thought. Everything was logic. Everything was all up in your head. Nothing came from the heart or the gut. So Aristotle comes along and goes, man, I just really don't. This is me paraphrasing what the philosopher Aristotle
Fair.
would have said. I really don't feel like this is reality because look at where we have these things that are deeply rooted in who we are and they cannot be separated from what we do. So as we create the Poetics, we believe that your passion cannot be separated from who you are. The work you do cannot be separated from who you are. You are forever intrinsically intertwined in those things. If anyone has ever seen the show Severance, like we describe this like Severance, you cannot have work and life.
Yes.
They are the same thing.
Yes.
And so, whether you have a job slinging chicken at Chick-fil-A behind a counter, or you are a purpose driven entrepreneur creating your own business, you can have the same level of purpose.
Mm,
And that purpose can drive what you do and how you show up.
yes.
So, with our clients that come into the Poetics, we are almost retraining their brains because we have to retrain them out of this, oh, I need work-life balance because I have to have my life and I have to have my work. Or I have to create enough space for my life and I have to create enough space for my work. And they can't touch. When the reality is that they cannot be separated.
Mm,
And so when we teach people, we kind of come from this perspective of, hey, we're going to push you because someone needs to push you. We all need somebody pushing us. And by pushing, cheering you on, standing in your corner,
yeah.
pointing you in the right direction or going, hey, there might be a roadblock over there. what if we thought this way? Or what if we redirected over here? Because the goal is not just to help our clients do well in business. Do we want them to have financial success? Of course we do. Because think of all the amazing things you can do when you have money in the bank.
Yeah.
You can repurpose that. You can invest in other things. But we want people to unashamedly tap into their passion and spontaneously overflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To find their poetry. We would consider poetry the pinnacle of finding finding that place in your life. I think you have found your poetry in this work through Eliminate Girl Hate, through this podcast. It is the intermingling of understanding, like, I'm not here to, when we talk about competitive and
Competition. Or
competition,
confidence.
confidence and competition.
Alliteration. It's difficult.
Around. There's a lot of alliteration. My husband loves it. It gets in my head. So confidence over competition. We have a lot of coaches. We tell them almost directly off the bat, collaborate with each other.
Yeah.
There is so much information in the world, and there is so much that's changing. You're never going to run out of content. And Susie isn't going to do the same thing as Joe, because they're going to talk to very different people, and they're going to come at what they do from a very unique perspective and worldview. So why be competitive about it? Instead, collaborate on it and think about how you can make it better and how you can have more impact potentially together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, because there's also this, I've done a lot of coaching in my life, and I've done, I've managed people. And when I was building the business and I was working to offering this idea of coaching as well.
Yeah.
I was talking to people, I have coached people who have been on my teams and so forth. And I was like, well, where do you think this should go and what should it look like? I'm just curious. You have been coached by me. What does that look like? And every single person said, well, I just don't really believe in traditional coaching because it's cookie cutter, right? And
Yes, it
said,
is.
the thing that made you a good coach for me is you knew me. You saw me, and that allowed you to be personal. So if you're going to sell a 3-session package of coaching, you're not going to be able to do that, and they're not going to get your greatness. And that, I think that's a little bit about what I learned from you all as well, is it wasn't this like, well, let me see your resume and you need to use these keywords and do this, right? It was about being vulnerable and getting to know, what is the negative self-talk that I have? What am I afraid of? And that's what I use in coaching. But I'll be honest, I thought I was pushy and I was doing the wrong things, because most of it I was doing within a corporate structure that told me, we don't have time for that. That's not what you need to do. We just need to get X, Y, and Z done by this date, right? And you're competing with the person in your same role in another channel. And if you can't get the numbers that they did, you're wasting your time coaching your team. You're not going to do that. You won't get promoted. You won't do this. Stop being such a girl about things and dealing with emotions. And that was all of the dialogue that I was hearing before this. And Harris kept telling me to ask people for what you need, ask them for clarification, talk to them, network. And I was like, ew, no, gross. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. And in the asking of people first, the first questions I started to ask was, why did you allow me to do this with you? And the answers that I got were so beautiful and humbling. But then I went to an event. I went to 2 events last night. And because I'm pushing myself to network and to talk about what I do. And that is very difficult for me. I can talk all day long, just not about that. And the first event that I went to, which I actually couldn't wait to tell you about, because it was about building communities of healthy masculinity. And it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was at a high school. And the high school boys started a club called the Healthy Masculinity Club. Not a teacher, not an advisor, the boys started it. And its
I love that.
focus was on misogyny and how did they combat that. And it started with 9 boys and it has like 200 now or whatever. There was hundreds of people in this room last night and they had this panel of men that were talking about the man box and what healthy masculinity looks like. And so I went to all the tables and I talked to every person who was in the room. And I've never done that before.
I
And
love
I
that.
asked them and I was like, what is your organization about? What do you do? Oh my gosh, here's what I do. And then I went to, and they gave me a little free t-shirt that they made for their club. So I can't wait to rep it. Shout out to Cleveland High School's Healthy Masculinity Club. And then I went to this event that was a winery that was partnering with this club called Hopscotch, which is like a really cool art installation in 3 cities. And Portland happens to have one. It's very, very cool. And we went in, and I'm actually interviewing the female owner of the winery on Monday. And it was her event. And so I went in. I did not know that the owner of Hopscotch was a woman. And she
Oh, wow.
came to help us move our table. And she was like, sorry, this is my place. I want to help you. And I was like, wait, you're the owner? I was like, I did not know there was a female owner. I am also a female owner of a business. It's called Eliminate Girl Hate. And I started talking to her about it. And I was like, I would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. And she said yes. And we exchanged cards or whatever. And my friend looked at me and she goes, I've never seen you do that before. I'm so proud of you. I would have never done that without you guys. Ever.
Oh,
Ever. And it was such a moment for me. And she was like, and that pitch was so good. Like, you were so confident and knew what it was. And I came home just feeling so like, wow, I went to 2 events and met people and wasn't ashamed to tell them what my business was. Look at that progress, right? And,
yeah.
some people could say that I could be competitive with you guys. Not that we do the exact same thing, but whatever. But it wasn't. You guys gave me permission. You supported me. Harris was very demanding of me. And sometimes
That feels right. That feels
go
right.
on Instagram live right now. And I'm like, no, I just woke up. I have no makeup. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, I'm not there yet.
It does.
Right.
Adjacent.
But in my time, those lessons are coming to fruition because of the healing that I did. I now can step out a little bit more. And so that process of space and grace and healing and the idea, because I know you talk about this a lot, this movement towards allowing everyone's voice to be heard and valued, right? That's what this is there's not a lot of spaces for women to be heard and valued. And so I wanted to Eliminate Girl Hate is about creating safe and equitable spaces. And this podcast is about creating a safe and equitable space for women to tell their stories and let those stories be the first follower for the next person and the person after that and the person after that. And I just love that, right? It's a community of hand holding and shoulder taps and like beautiful things, right? And
yeah.
And to see you come out from behind the scenes now, and I think I told you this in our call, like, I don't mean it to sound condescending, and I hope that it doesn't, but I'm so proud of you for that because
thank you.
I've known that you have that. And when I first saw you start posting, I'm over here going, oh, look at what's happening. Like, it's okay.
Yes, I found LinkedIn
in
in January.
Right, exactly. And it's like, and all of these women that were in the group, Diana and Susie and Sherry and so many other women. And I'm sorry if I didn't say your name, and I should have. All of a sudden, I'm Sally. Like I'm
Val.
Yeah, Val. Oh my gosh, I just saw this woman, Val Garcia, speak at the virtual story this year, and to see where she was to then owning this stage like a boss. Go look up Val Garcia if you
you should.
want to learn
She's
more.
amazing.
I'll put her information in the outro. but to see women coming into their own and being unapologetic about that power, whether you're an Enneagram 8 or whatever I am that is not an Enneagram 8, because I want
Fair.
a little of what you have. And I, like, how do I get that? And it's very cool. It's very empowering to see it.
It's my favorite. And to be honest with you, I think I told you this in our first call. You created Eliminate Girl Hate and you sent us a bunch of stickers.
Yeah.
And my son put Eliminate Girl Hate on his water bottle. And this was just a couple of months ago. He came home and he goes, "Man, Mom, I have this sticker on my water bottle." And my friend looked at me and goes, "Why would you have that sticker on your water bottle? That's such a weird sticker." And his response was, "I have it because I have sisters."
Mm.
Because it's not lost on a 10-year-old boy
Yeah.
that the idea of girl hate just shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, it is trained out of them. It is not even trained out of them. It is forced out by culture. And we're working so hard that our 10-year-old is a boy and he is the oldest and he has 2 younger sisters and his brain still cannot comprehend the idea of them being left out or them not having a seat at the table or their voice not being heard. And it's at this age, that he looks at his almost 9-year-old sister when she is in full meltdown because a parent is trolling her. And he goes, "Everly, it doesn't even matter because you know that none of that's true."
Oh, I love
Right. And he cries because he goes, I just don't understand how we get to this place.
Yeah.
And so the work that you've already done, even through something as simple as a sticker, but the powerful language you put behind it is not lost on my 10-year-old son.
Thank you. And I love this because I think it transitions to something that we talked about, and I didn't know how to bring it up, and I think this is perfect. It is about the examples that we have in our life. And when we talked about you being a guest, I know that you wanted to make sure that this wasn't this is not how you said it, so I apologize.
But you can say it however you need to say it. I'm comfortable with
This
it.
wasn't about women are amazing, women are great, and men are awful, right? That's not your experience, and that you have a man in your life with your husband who is supporting and demanding of you, who sees your light and wants to shine it even more. And so those are examples your kids are seeing. So when your kid sees an equally yoked partnership, then they come into the world and say, "Wait, why would they not be able to do what I can do?"
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to them to see it any other way. And part of that conversation was, we can train our girls all day long to stick up for themselves, to stand up for themselves, to go, "Hey, it just doesn't matter." Fill in the blank, fill in the blank, fill in the blank. But if I'm not training my son to be different and to go against the grain and look at his friends and go, "I don't even understand why you're mocking me over this."
Yep. And if men are not modeling it for them as well.
Yes.
Right. And that goes into that concept last night that I was hearing about, this man box, this idea that there's a way to walk like a man, sit like a man, talk like a man, look like a man. And when the man was describing it, he was like, it's a box because boxes are so rigid. And this concept of masculinity has so much rigidness to it. And how do we take that rigidity out and allow vulnerability and space? And so I would love to hear, I guess I'll ask it in the form of a question.
Sure.
Before you met your husband, was that your experience growing up? Were you always surrounded by men who were like, women and men, do whatever you want, like whatever? Or was that was your first experience? And so how did that feel?
Completely counterintuitive. Before I had met my husband, I had been in an abusive relationship for 2 years. And he was domineering and he was physically abusive, mostly psychologically. It made me feel very small and insignificant. And by the time I met my husband, well, by the time I met my husband, I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so very impressionable. And I remember the first couple of months, I didn't believe it was real because my experience said at some point this will break. And at some point the tables will turn. Because that was my experience. It's all I had known.
So did anybody, because of what you just said, you were 17 when you met him, a 2-year relationship before that, you're very young to be in an abusive relationship. And
no one knew.
That was what I was going to ask. Did
no one
anybody know? And
no one
why
knew.
did you keep it a secret?
Oh gosh, why not? Who would believe me?
Yeah.
I remember, so I grew up in a pretty legalistic church environment, and his family was pillars of the church. He was the guy that everyone wanted to go out with, went to Christian school.
Yeah.
And I remember once kind of alluding to it. Like, I mean, when you're wearing long sleeves in the middle of July, people are going to ask some questions or ask you, hey, where did that bruise on your leg come from? And you're just kind of like, oh, well, no big deal. It's fine. Partly because I didn't want to answer the question.
Yeah.
Because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like, how did I get here? And, oh, I'm just going to be seen as another weak woman who can't do something for herself, like leave.
Yeah.
And I remember I would tell him I was leaving, and it was, well, I will find you. I will find you, and I'll make you pay. And I was so afraid of that I didn't think anything would stop him. I legitimately didn't believe that. And when I got into college we had broken up and I had met my husband, and then I got into college and I stupidly chose to go to another religious school. I remember telling some of my dorm mates that had happened to me because something had come up, and I was like, oh man, this happened to me. And I was told, well, then it must have been on you from women.
Yeah.
And so when you have, like, that's the crazy part. I couldn't trust the men in my life, but then I couldn't trust the women because I was so stupid and so small and so not capable of stepping up and standing in for myself that surely it was my fault.
Yeah.
And the fact that we as women do that to other women is insane.
Because we're all fighting to feel safe.
We're all fighting, yes. Yeah. But we can't even allow there to be a safety net for other women because we want to judge them and we want to tell them, look what, this is a setback for women because look what you did. Yep. And I remember my husband at one point, like, I think I tried to break up with him because I was like, surely I'm just going to go ahead and just cut this off before it goes sideways. And he looked at me and he was just like, I don't think you understand how much I care about you and how I would just never do that. And so what does it take for me to get you to believe me?
Yeah.
And we've been together since 2001. So it's 23 years. We'll be celebrating 19 years of marriage in a couple of weeks. And every single day he shows up and reminds me why I matter, why I belong. And he pushes me to see things in myself that I still struggle to see at 40. Yeah. I still struggle to see them and believe them because it's just come at me for all of these years. Yeah. And knowing now that we have daughters, he works overtime. Knowing my story, he fills in that gap for them preemptively.
And I like that you, even in the way that, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that because those are not easy conversations to have in a public domain, right?
But you're right.
But I like that you used the word he shows me, not he tells me, because oftentimes I think there's a weird juxtaposition of the words versus the actions. And I'm a person who I have dealt with sexual assault and rape in my life more than once, unfortunately. And the same thing happened. The people that I told did not believe me. And
Yeah.
therefore, I did not feel I could tell adults, right? Because if
Yes.
the people my own age and in my own community wouldn't believe me, then an adult
Yeah.
would never believe me. And this concept of showing versus telling is, I think, where the safety comes in, because
Yeah.
it's easier to believe what you see than what you hear. And so,
Absolutely.
do you remember the first time you felt safe with your husband and you now did not believe the tables were going to turn?
Yeah, what's funny is I never didn't feel safe,
Mm.
but I couldn't see it.
Ooh, okay.
So I never had a moment where I was like, "Ooh, should I question this?" I always felt safe. I just couldn't understand,
Ooh.
like, where is the turn coming?
It was a bit about
And
worth.
so there was yeah, maybe,
Okay.
or, "Oh, is there gonna be a day that you're gonna get mad enough at me?"
Yeah.
And I used to try, I mean, he would tell you this. I used to try to
Of
provoke him on
course.
purpose.
Of course.
'Cause I'm like, "Hey, let's just go ahead and punch all the
Yep.
buttons, because if I can find the right one,
I did the same thing.
I
Or
know which one to stay away from, or I can decide I'm out."
Yep.
Because I wanna see your worst reaction.
Yes.
Uh, in 23 years, my husband has never yelled at me,
I love it.
not even once.
I can't even imagine him
Um,
yelling, actually.
I know, no, and he's not that person anyway, but, like, he's never yelled at me, and he has continued to show up. I remember I broke up with him for like a handful of months in college because that's what why not? And he went to the guy I decided I wanted to go out with, and he was like, "Hey, I'm not going out with her anymore, but I still love her. Let me help you love her well."
Oh my god.
And it's ridiculous. Like, you think about this stuff and you're like, and it drove this guy nuts
Of
because he's like,
course.
"Will you tell your ex-boyfriend to stop calling me and telling me all your favorite things because it's really annoying?" And I was like, "Oh, but also he's telling you all my favorite
I know,
things."
well, hello. And you're
Oh,
not
maybe I
doing
should give him a
anything with that
call.
information?
Yes, exactly. But, like, before this podcast, he was texting me going, "Man, you're gonna be amazing. I can't wait to listen to this specific episode because I know it's gonna be amazing, and I'm so glad that you're using your voice." That's the guy I'm married to.
Yes.
They're out there. They I wouldn't say that they are everywhere, but they are out there.
According to the New
Um,
York Times, there was just a survey. Did you see this thing where it was like,
oh, I haven't seen it.
it's from I think it's like a dating company or something like that, but they put something where you can fill in your requirements for a partner, and they will
Oh, okay.
tell you the likeliness of finding that partner. And
Oh, that would be
oh
devastating.
yeah, mine was 0.24%. And it I had no income requirements, no looks requirements, no, like, it was like basically you should have a job.
Is he
Yeah,
breathing?
and I was like, "Oh gosh, that's really depressing." So I like hearing this, and one of the things, and I think you emanate this very well, is to find that person, you have to demand that person. Like, and I
Yeah.
don't mean like, "Hey, treat me this way," but you have to
No.
believe in your own value and worth enough to know that you
Yes.
deserve to be in that supportive environment. And we all do. I don't care what you've done, who you've been with, what your experience is, we all deserve to be loved unequivocally, without shame and without pressure, and with this
Yeah.
acceptance that I want to know all of your favorite things and shower that on you and support you and lift you up and shine a spotlight on all of the things that make you beautiful and unique. And if you
Yeah.
believe that for yourself, then the opportunity is out there to have that.
Yeah. And when people show you who they are, believe them,
Amen to that.
whether, good and bad.
Yep.
He's never not shown me who he
Yep.
was,
And
who
again,
he is.
show, don't tell me. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah, he probably couldn't tell you what my favorite, like, we would probably lose a newlywed game because he couldn't tell you, like, the ridiculous stuff, like, what's her favorite TV show? He'd be like, I have no idea. Something where people die.
He
Like
loves murder docs.
Dateline. She loves murder. She loves crime shows. But he knows that when I wake up in the morning, by the time I'm standing up, he knows whether I'm gonna have a good day or a bad day.
Yeah.
He knows how I walk down the stairs, what I need.
Yeah.
And he sees me when I show up on calls. And it's funny, as we onboard new clients, he always has a moment where he introduces me and he goes, if you think she's just my wife, you've already underestimated her.
Yeah. I love it.
And having someone like that in your camp changes everything.
Yeah.
So there are amazing men out there who are those people.
Yeah.
Find them.
I love that.
Find them and believe them. It's not just find them, but believe them.
And let them in.
Because they are seeing something in you.
Yep.
And it's easy to give this blanket, which is why we're having this part of this conversation, is it's the blanket, damn the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like down with men. Yes, to the patriarchy part. But there are good men out there who also would say the same thing.
Exactly.
And there are good men out there who believe in women and who stand in the gap and become the bridge. We raise them, and we can be in their atmosphere, and they will bring us up with them.
Yeah.
So find them.
And we need to bring them up with us as well, right? It's recognizing that and lifting that up, supporting it, encouraging it, letting them know why that means something to you or that's valuable. I think that with all people, right? Letting them know this is why what you just did meant so much to me. Celebrate each other. Tell people how they help you.
Yes. And it's not a need. I don't need them for that. But it is nice to have and recognize.
And I appreciate it, right?
Yes.
I love that. And I actually think that's such a beautiful place to tie our conversation down at. So before we kind of hang up the microphone, I don't even think that's an expression, but whatever.
Sure.
We've had this talk. It's kind of gone all these beautiful places, which I love. And I'm so grateful for your honesty and vulnerability and all of that. But is there something that you want people to take from this conversation today?
Oh man, just say what you need to say.
Mm-hmm.
I wish if I could stand on any stage, which I've stood on a few, it is always my hope that we say what we need to say, and we say it without shame, and we say it without fear, because there is always somebody listening who might need to hear exactly what you have to say. And if it's not going to be you showing them the way, it's going to be somebody else. So why not let it be you?
Yes, let the magic happen.
Let the magic happen. Be a lighthouse.
I hope that means that Story 2025 will also have Kate Harris as a speaker, because I think that is a beautiful message that you could share. I'm just being supportive and demanding of you that the world needs.
I love that. We'll see. I might throw up before I go on stage just because the public speaking gives me the willies. But no, I have found it. We're getting there.
My business is public speaking, and when I spoke at Story, I don't even know if you fully know this, but I went on the sound check and started hysterically bawling and convulsing, basically. And
really?
I have video of it. Like, I videotaped the whole thing because I was like, I want to remember.
I just remember you being brilliant. So.
And the sound guys at the Skirmer Horn came up and they're like, honey, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know. I've dreamt of this stage. Like, I took a picture of my feet 5 years before on the stage and put it in my diary and said, I will speak here one day. And all that pressure, I hadn't eaten for a week. I threw up every day for a week before Story. And the sound guy says, we do a lot of events, and this is the most supportive audience you will ever speak in front of, because they want you to win. And then I went into the green room, and the volunteer, Hardison Moles, I think is his last name.
Hardison is amazing.
Sat with me for 30 minutes, and we talked about food so that I would I know he was doing it to calm me down. He was not supposed to be in that room with me for 30 minutes. And I went on the stage and I talked to my sister before, and she said, "You know our motto. When you're nervous, when you're upset, when you're unhappy, you wiggle. It's really hard to be anything negative when you're wiggling." And so I'm like backstage, superhero posing, I'm wiggling, Janahe high five, because then
Yes.
I had to go after the incredible Janahe, and I'm like, oh crap. And I went out and I took a deep breath and I thought I was going to cry. And I heard the voice of my sister. And so I said out loud, my sister told me to wiggle to get the nerves out. So if you give me a minute. And I wiggled on stage and I said, and if you're embarrassed for me, you can also wiggle. And the audience laughed and I could speak. And so for whatever that's worth, those are the moments that you are inviting people into your vulnerability, but because your voice needs to be heard, they accept that and they know it's real and they know it's authentic. And so many people were so kind to me afterwards and hugging me and sharing their own stories with me. And so while it was not my best speaking gig ever,
I thought it was great.
thank you. And I know I can do better and I have done better. It was one of the most pivotal for me because it was
Yeah.
such a lesson in not being ashamed of the fear and the vulnerability. So I just encourage you to
Thank you.
box a few things out.
You never know. I may stand on stage
That's
and
right.
give my poetry, my spontaneous
love it.
overflow of powerful feelings.
I love it.
because I have many
Yeah.
around just speak.
I get it.
Just speak.
I get it. It's the
So
word.
maybe I need to take that for myself. Just speak.
That's right. Just the year of doing dangerous things.
Yes, it is. So why not?
So thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yes.
it. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you for your courage and
Thank
bravery
you
to
so much
speak.
for having me.
Yeah. Wow. I'm digesting everything that just happened talking to the great Kate Harris. It's so funny because when we do this, part of my thing is that I don't want to have pre-recorded questions and like, okay, I'm going to ask you this and you answer this way. I just want natural, authentic conversations to flow because I feel that people are more honest in that respect. They're not trying to be perfect and they're not trying to answer the way they think they should, which is kind of a lot of what we talked about is this trusting your gut and using your voice and getting out there. And I really think that's what happened here. We had an idea of what we wanted to talk about and we definitely did. But it flowed into such this beautiful conversation of confidence and worth and using your voice and creating space for people and grace for people. And there are a few things I needed to fact check, which of course, because I did this immediately, I forgot to do. So I will make sure and maybe put them in the show notes or do something like that for people. But, one of the things we talked about was the Poetics and the group that they join. And Astoria Collective is their organization. And so you can go there and you can find all of the great work they're doing from story to the Poetics and some of the ways in which their business is kind of growing and creating more opportunities for stories to be told, which I think is going to be pretty cool as we move forward and do things. And I actually got the person I needed to give to you, Valerie Garcia. You can go to valeriegarcia.com. She does keynotes and coaching for people who just want to get unstuck and make some big moves. And so check her out. You will not regret it. I mentioned a few other people. Sally. Sally is Sally Zimmy, and I believe her website is, I'm going to tell you in just a second because I should have prepared for this. She just wrote this great book, and she does like speaker coaching. Her website is bemoved.com. Great person to help you get comfortable with being on the stage. And she likes to say moving you from the sidelines to the spotlight. So really great person also that you can get in touch with or learn stuff about and advance what you're doing and what you want to do in the world. And this is really what we're we're trying to promote here is all the people that can help you along your journey and do more exciting things. So check all of them out. I hope you enjoy this episode. DM us, message us, follow us, ask questions. We're happy to keep this conversation going. And thank you so much for listening. And thanks to Kate for a really amazing and awesome conversation.